Hello, we are Sam,
And Connor.
and this is Rolling with Story, the show where we talk about tabletop role playing games and how to improve and enjoy your gaming experience. In this episode, we're talking about what makes rich characters and how communication between DMs and players can improve storytelling. So, how to make a good character, what makes a good character? Now, we're going to be discussing this today. One thing I always think with a character is motives. Having motives, having crystallized, I want to do this. Doesn't mean they can't evolve. They should evolve as the story progresses, but having a core motive about what my character wants to achieve, what they like doing, interests, can be so helpful and helps you build your backstory around and structure your character and gives the DM some stuff as well. On that note, what do you think about that, Connor? Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, loads. To be honest, there's actually so much in that. I think motivation and goals give your character drive, right? That's what they're there for. I think, especially in story writing as well. When a character has a clear goal, they've set their sights upon something, the character is almost pulled through on like a string. And that in itself gives the character its character. Because you go, well, look at what drives this character. Look what makes this character tick and move. I think it's super important, and I think like you said, I think that evolves as the story goes on. But coming into a session with a clear motive for your character will do nothing but help. Nothing but help you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that it just gives the DM something to do. You know what your players want, what the character wants. And sometimes what the character wants and what the player wants aren't always the same. And it just can be quite interesting. I know later on we're going to be talking about types of player, but I won't jump onto that too quickly now. But that motive, I want to get this item. Maybe it was an item your grandfather once possessed. It was a family heirloom stolen years ago. You want to get it back. That in itself is such a cool motive. It's so fun, and just achieving it as the character, achieving it is so satisfying.
And it can be so many different types, I think, as well. Like when we say that, you're like you're claiming like a lost artifact, or it could be getting redemption. Or it could be trying to find something out. The motive is so expansive. There's so much it can be, and that's the beauty of it. Is it can be anything. It can literally be anything. What I like to do is take stock of where my character is. What is the driving force of my character? What goals have I achieved before? And what goals do I need to achieve going forward? What is my character needing? Or there's a story technique, which is you write down what your characters need, and then you write down what your characters want. So like the characters want things, but actually the DM should give the character what they need, which is actually what is the fulfillment of that character. So there's a difference between want and need, and having that. Sometimes as a player, you don't need to know that. You just need to know the wants of your character. And then the DM, through clever storytelling, can end up giving your character what they actually need. Because sometimes you have maybe a little bit more of a neutral character that's got maybe more of not a higher orientated goal towards a noble good. Maybe it's towards something a little bit more neutral. And the DM through ways could alter it. Maybe your goal becomes in line with good because certain things in the story change your character to a way that their alignment shifts towards a different goal.
And that point about shifting is so key. The evolution of your character growing as the story changes, them changing with you, and you learn about your character. Like you can't know everything about your character in the first episode, in session 1, session 2, session 0. You just can't.
Yeah.
You know it through experience. It's through action and going. You get put in a situation and you have to pick between retrieving the heirloom or saving one of your party members.
Yes.
And you have that moment of, what would my character do? What is the primary motive there? And that in itself can be really interesting to explore. It can also be quite difficult as a player to explore. I know I've had hard times with I had a character called Belladonna who was a difficult character. She was quite a dark character, really fun, really enjoyable, but quite heavy toll on me as a player. And her goals most of the time were like vengeance based. It was all she was very that sort of Batman archetype of like vengeance is the key. I will strike anybody down that I need to. She was very religious, which was so fun to play. But it meant that there were these moments where what she wanted to achieve and what probably was best, want and need, were definitely different. And I think, and sometimes the group need supersedes the player or character need, and that is the quest, isn't it? That's the quest.
Yeah.
You know, Boromir wants the ring, but the need of the group is the ring goes to Mordor.
The ring goes to Mordor.
Sorry if that's a spoiler if anybody hasn't.
Oh no! Oh my god! Spoilers for Lord of the Rings. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it to come me off guard. No, I think growth is super important. I think also it really does bear to mention that no matter how much kind of story work you do before your character starts, I always find my characters start very two-dimensional. And I think that's so common because you don't know the world yet. You don't know existence in this universe. You just come in, and I find my characters so kind of two-dimensional. And sometimes, I'd be like, I haven't done a good job. But I think it's just natural. I think they come in two-dimensional. And then once your character starts to adapt to the world around them is when they start to get these three-dimensional characteristics because they're starting to live and breathe in the world itself. And that's what growth is, reacting to your DM as the DM is reacting to you. Because I know we talked about in our last episode how DMing is really reactive, but also I guess playing is really reactive. And in the fact that you've both got to be picking up each other's threads. As a player, it's also your job to pick up the DM's threads and go, oh, the DM's given me a new toy. How am I going to play with this? How am I going to, make use of this and involve that into my character?
Yeah. That is the joy. That is the joy of it. Is going. I'll explore my character and explore the situation. And when you've got a good DM, they make the world ready for you to run around and press something and go, what does that do? And then put yourself in a situation and go, what would my character do? And also, I know we talked about it before about DMs giving players opportunities to look cool, to have cool moments. But it's also not always about looking cool. Sometimes you've got to give your characters the opportunity to grieve. And NPCs died. How does your character deal with that? Your character might have been
PC
or a PC died. How do you deal with that? That's a really tough one. And usually that writes off a big not writes off, but there's a big portion of the episode that goes to mourning. We've had loads of funerals when characters have died, and they've been super emotional. We've all been crying on Discord. It's deep, but it's because it is deep. There's a real core of emotion there, and that really is the crux of it. Is a character, like you say, it can't start three-dimensional. It can't, because basically it's a blank slate that you've slapped a couple of words on and a class and a lineage or race or whatever, and then you're trying to get that to be a whole person, a whole being, and it won't be at the start, but eventually it will. I always think about this with one of your characters, Toshi, who I know you really enjoyed playing in my Cyberpunk campaign, where he started off as like ideals, didn't he? He started off as like he's a sacrifice guy. He'll sacrifice himself for people, for his friends. That was
Paragon
Zero, the complete paragon. If people aren't sure what paragon means, it's the kind of your pursuit of like high ideals. You're like the archetypal good, right?
You're trying to be the best. I would describe it, the paragon, the character is like, you're trying always to make the right decision no matter what. And I know most players are always trying to do that, but you're kind of aligning yourself with the greater good. I guess in a way that kind of Paladin-esque feel of always trying to strive towards the good, but not in a kind of lawful sense. You're kind of, it's hard to explain, isn't it? That paragon thing, but very much has a set ideals and virtues towards the noble, I guess. Very noble good, like trying always to see the world in such a noble and good light and keep it happy and motivated, I guess. Yeah.
And that makes me think about Toshi, where Toshi had these sort of he had this energy inside him, and he's got this power. He kind of bursts out, superhero sort of esque. And there was a moment later on, we probably had probably 10 episodes or something, and we had a boss fight. And Toshi he would pull his punches. So he'd hit people and they'd go down, but he wouldn't kill them. And that was his rule. He had a bit of a rule. And then he lost control. He got too much power. He lost control and he killed a guy. And that was such a character moment. And your RP of it was so good, where he was devastated. Absolutely devastated. And that moment, like, that made him 3D because he'd made a mistake. Even though he had so many positive ideals, he was the paragon, he'd made a mistake.
Yeah.
And he had to live with the consequences. And consequences is a super important thing for characters.
Yeah, I agree. Also, playing through that as a player, for me, it was really interesting because you're trying to be the noble good, and you make a mistake. It happens. And that's where the growth comes in. And I go, well, now you get it. Chaos gets added. And chaos is the primordial thing of opportunity. So now you go, what do I do? What does Toshi do? Which is the great thing to do, which is always ask, what would your character do? What would they do? I know people can abuse that, and we should probably talk about that and write that down as a note. This is what my character would do. But if you come at it in a good light, I would go, okay, so his whole thing was noble good and being noble. So he then had to take the mistake as a mistake and go, well, I'm now a sinner. I'm now a flawed person trying to uphold noble good, which completely altered his dynamic of, I'm a sinner like everyone else, but I will still strive to be good. And that was even ingrained, that motive for him even more, because he goes, well, now bad, trying to do good. So it becomes even ingrained in his character. Very good. Yeah, I liked it. It was great.
That was a cool moment, I thought. And it really set the stage for him as a character to develop. Now, we've been talking a lot about characters, and you're an experienced DM. And growth of characters is key. But I wanted to ask you about, as a DM, we've touched on it a bit, how do you promote growth in characters?
That is a question, sir. That is a question. How do I promote growth in my characters? I like to put a lot of I'm very situational with my DMing, so it's very reactive. You've got tools as a DM. You've got place, people, and story, I guess, would be off the top of my head what I can think of. And you're trying to alter the characters inside your game using those three elements. So characters is obviously quite an easy way, well, not an easy, but like a straightforward way. If a player needs development, you need to put in a reactive sense the thing that will give them that development in front of them. So, and the players will tell you, if you're DMing, they don't tell you with their words, but they'll show you. If you pay close attention to their characters, they will show you what type of things their characters are trying to create anyway. Let's take Toshi again for an example. He's always trying to do the noble good. He's always trying to do the noble good. So the reactionary thing is, you've done bad. How do you deal with that? Interesting. Okay, you've dealt with that now. Okay, well, what about if I give you this ethical problem or this thing that once again stretches your character? So I guess you place things in front of the characters that will force them to make decisions to evolve their character. Is how I would put that, I guess.
Okay.
How would you do it?
I agree. And I think it comes down to watching how your player and how the character has developed already. So you can look at the history of it. Like, I know Toshi's a good guy. I know he's pulling his punches. So, for instance, in the case of Toshi killing that guy, it didn't happen by accident. I forced it to happen. As the DM, I did make that happen because he'd been pulling his punches. But there was this moment where he unlocked like a level. He was level, mechanically speaking, he was level 2. But it was a really cool moment, and there was some cool rolls and stuff. And he gained the ability of a level 3 ability. So it was a bit cheaty. It was a bit sneaky, but it was naughty. But it was a bit cheaty, but it was a lot of fun. And he developed this power. He kind of unlocked a subclass of barbarian, which is a homebrew one I made called Titanic Warrior. Lots of superhero stuff. And he unlocked it, and it was this power he'd never felt before. And it made him so much stronger. But with that had to come a cost. Is that he has to be unsure of how to wield it. He hasn't felt this power before.
Gives risk.
He gives exactly. It's like you get a good thing, but there's got to be a consequence. And I was like, well, and you were like, okay, I hit him, he goes down, but he doesn't kill him.
He was aggressive as well.
He was really aggressive. He was a nasty boss. He was trying to kill you guys. So it was he was a bad guy, but it was this moment of you punching him. And you were like, he doesn't kill him. And I was like, I think he does though. Because I think Toshi would go, I'm going to hit him with 70%. But 70% now is enough to kill this guy.
Yeah,
you just wouldn't have known that.
And
that moment of kind of him looking at his hand like, oh no, I've just killed someone's dead because I killed him. That was a real moment. But you're right, it's about choice and it's about reflection.
As a DM as well, it'd be about knowing your players. Once again, you're very safe to make those type of choices with an experienced player.
Yes, agreed.
That's what I would also put there as a disclaimer. As a serious player and as great friends that me and Sam are, we trust each other wholeheartedly to make the right decisions for characters and so forth.
Yeah.
So there is a disclaimer for some people might not have liked that as well. Some people might have been like, oh, how could you change my character? But I think that comes with like an untrusting mentality of where the story needs to go. So I would definitely do that with newer people as well. You could also put in feelers for that type of thing, like, I think your character's like this, and you can test the waters with certain things. Like if I was maybe a little less experienced or something, you could have tested with building up, like, oh, you're starting to feel this kind of thing, or the power inside you is so turmoil. There's so much turmoil in it, and you can get me to start acting that by just saying the power itself. Because it's not good to say your character feels this, but the power inside you is like this, and then you can build it up like that as well.
Interesting. I agree, and I think from the DM side, I quite like doing this sometimes. I was thinking about this actually before we recorded this. I was thinking about this in my head of one thing I like to do is when you have a character, and it helps to have an established lore where you've got, there are factions that have been historically pitted off against each other. And you can say, now your culture wouldn't like orcs. They wouldn't like them because there's huge history there. There's been massive raids between both. There's been huge wars in the past. You're most likely, some of your great-grandparents died in wars against orcs. You probably wouldn't like them.
Like elves and dwarves in Lord of the Rings.
Exactly that. You go, there's this historic thing. Now, you don't say, you hate orcs. You say, it is likely that a person from your culture, an elf from your culture, a dwarf or whatever, would dislike them. But you give them the option. You could be the exception to the rule. You could have been raised by orcs, and that been your character arc, and you're actually a dwarf, but you were raised by orcs. I don't know, maybe the backstory, maybe your parents got captured, or you got floated down the river in a basket, shenanigans, and the orcs picked you up. You don't know, and you go, this is a choice for you. I'm just giving you the background. You can make your call. And players, in my experience, have really liked that because they get to put their own stamp. They go, no, I'm the dwarf that loves orcs. Or they go, I'm mistrustful of orcs, but I don't hate them purely because of who they are. I don't like violent, warmongering orcs. And people have that. And that is in itself, you're going, stimulus, and you always say this about stimulus and reaction is the big one. That's the DM player and player to DM. Players give us stimulus all the time. And we react, and that's the game, isn't it? That is the game.
There's so much in that as well, man. I think first couple of ideas I have there is, as a player, don't be afraid to make that stimulus as well. Like it is stimulus react. So as a player, don't be afraid to make that stimulus for your DM. Your DM will thank you. It means he doesn't have, or they don't have to work as hard. They'll be like, oh, thank you, stimulus. I'll write some stuff about this. And then the other one is, once again, that's a great, the elf dwarf, evil orcs, but redemptive. It's a story arc. That is a story arc. You're placing, everyone loves Legolas and Gimli because they crossed a divide. That is great storytelling. So placing options into your story for characters to grab hold of and go, oh, I really love that story element. I'm going to grab hold of that story element, and that's going to be my arc to complete. And I'm going to complete that, and I'm going to make a thing. So I think that leads on to DMs. As a DM, kind of scatter the seeds of those. You can throw out, oh, you maybe historically don't like each other, but they might go, no, that's not something I want to mess around with. I don't want to play with that. And they just focus on something else. Cool, let it go. Make it disappear into the background. Fade it out. Don't use it. Scatter another couple of seeds in front of your players, and they go, oh, actually, that one's really cool for my player. I like that. I would really love to do a story arc based around that. And they pick it up, and you see when they pick it up, because they go, oh, their eyes light up. They start playing with it. They start acting on it, and you go, I've got you. I've hooked you with one of my stories, and now we're going to write a story on the thread that you've picked up.
That is it. And D&D is about community storytelling. It's about community storytelling. And actually, this brings me to a quote that I have pre-written down, which is a Brennan Lee Mulligan quote. Amazing guy, amazing videos, amazing DM and player.
Yes, through and through.
He has a great quote, which is D&D is gambling with stories. And I love that quote because I think it's so true. And you're totally right. You throw loads of stuff down. You throw loads of stories down as a DM, as a player too, and you go, I'm going to pick that up. I'm going to make that something. I'm going to leave that be. I'm going to make that happen. For me as a player, there's been loads of times that I've done this. I'm actually a kind of renowned that I take quite a lot of creative liberties with my characters and the cultures that they're from, making words up, making up cultural things in the moment, not asking the DM.
Though.
But I know you like it, and then you add something, and then within this, like, oh, this is this rich culture. The first character I really did this with was the love of my life character, Siren Alashad, who was a desert wizard. He became the Guardian, which was like the white wizard-esque style guy. Sure. And he was from this desert culture called the Ramasheen, and they started off as just they were a desert nomadic folk. Yeah. Right?
We took a lot of inspiration for like Bedouin peoples,
yes, exactly,
and that kind of culture, and we started that as kind of a base, and then obviously we both, you especially, with you falling in love with a character, started adding parts onto it, fantasy elements, and I started adding fantasy elements, and then it became what it was.
And eventually it got to this point where we had so many terms. So I was the Mulakala, which was like, what was it, like the chosen
yeah,
one?
chosen one,
chosen by fate or something like that. And then we had another PC who protected the Ramasheen, and he became the Ramado, which was friend of the Ramasheen.
Yeah.
And then he became the Ramadosak, which was like he was like a leader of the Ramasheen.
Yeah.
And then we'd meet with we had like honestly about 5 or 6 different times we met with the Ramasheen elders in a tent and ate some like curried goat stew, and would talk to the elders about like changes that were happening for the Ramasheen. They were like we started them to live in a city. We wanted them to live in a city. And that was a big cultural change for them. They were nomadic people, and that just made it so rich. And it meant as soon as you felt you were stepping through the tent flap, and you sat down and you were in this moment, and it's just that is.
And but beautiful. That there, I think, beautifully sums up what makes a good player and what makes a good character. It was your ability and want as well. I think the ability and want is important to go, well, I want to build these customs. I want to build the whole nation of my people. Oh, we have this custom. We do this thing. We say this blessing over food. This is the name we give to people who have helped our culture. This is the name we give to our war leaders. And you built upon that, where you were almost a mini DM of your own cosmos in the game.
Yeah.
And I guess there are some DMs that might take offense to that.
I
don't think they should. I think you have so much to do as a DM, and partly my DMing is so much story based, and story can be so difficult to craft well, that these type of world building things, why not let your players do them? Why not give them a chance to just go absolutely? Because all it does is it connects your player intrinsically with the world. They become so connected to that people, to that place, to the thing. that they're instantly in the mindset and in their character. So I would encourage it, even if it's not your style. Give it a go and have a try. Try and encourage that in your players and see how they light up every time they meet their people.
I absolutely agree. It is so key, and I definitely felt my first campaign. I definitely made mistakes. I remember was really specific one of that you were joining the first Cyberpunk campaign I did, and you wanted to make a robot and like an AI. And I was like, no, there's no AI. There's a whole thing about there's no AI. And you were like, but could I make it? And I was really hard on like, there's no AI. No. And I look back on it and I go, but that would have been so cool.
Yeah.
Because it would have made the AI and actually the police would want to find you.
Amazing.
And there's some AI SWAT team that hunts down AI creators.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? That would have been such a
yes
cool story.
and again.
That would have been such a cool thing to explore. And I wish I had done that differently, but you live and learn.
That is all. When you start in any type of field, you will always have those things you look back on, because that is just how it works, isn't it? And I think what we can do in these sessions is try and tell you, try everything, even if it seems a little bit out. You've got this perfect idea. D&D or TTRPGs in general are working at their strongest where everyone is in this mental brainstorming, world building session where everybody's ideas are being picked up. If they're not perfect for the story, let someone pick them up and go, oh, let me just tweak it a little bit and stick it back into the story. And we should, going back to like what makes a good character as well. And like that can be backstory as well. Like tweaking your backstory. There's a lot of elements of write everything down as a first draft and then change little bits.
Yes.
Keeping that. I also would say that keep backstory at the back. To an extent, keep it at the back, but it influences your character, and then have those moments where you bring it out. Because that's beautiful as well. And you remember those, having that backstory built in your character allows you to have those moments where you sit down at the campfire and someone goes, "Why do you do that?" Like with the Ram Machine Siren, for example, and you go, well, let me tell you, fellow players, us Ram Machine have this blessing, and and you would tell them about the blessing, and then maybe after a fight, you weren't connecting with one of the characters, and the character comes up to you and they do the bow, or they do the blessing, and it's like, wow, we've just interacted in a culture, made up culture, in a made up world to show respect, and it's a language we only speak. Like it's crazy.
It is super cool, and I think one thing I thought that was interesting you were saying about is, DMs, you should let people do it, and there comes with that social contract. And the social contract has never been summarized better than a phrase you use when you're DMing, which is "don't piss on my chips," which I think is absolutely true. Is as a player, it is,
oh my god,
don't be the person. Don't. This is one thing. I do little things where I go, they eat this food, they bow like this, they use this word. That really is kind of fluff detail. I would never go, add a god to your pantheon.
I get
that. You'd never do that, because that is like you're taking a huge chunk of like major world building, and you're going, I made this up. That isn't so good. That's
a really fair point, actually. We should talk about that. Actually,
so don't be the guy that makes up the god of pancakes. Doesn't tell the DM. It doesn't go ahead of time. I really thought there could be a god that could be about pancakes. Now, one thing I've done before, and we have a friend who is really good at world building parts. And what I did before my campaign started is he said he wanted to play a time-based wizard that controls he wanted to be a time wizard. I had a bit of an idea behind it anyway. I was like, right, there's going to be these time wizards, kind of like in Dune and in Warhammer 40k, they're going to control space travel. That's what they're going to do. That's the niche they've got. And I said to him, look, man, you can fill that in however you want. He, within 2 days, had sent me a full page of things he'd written about his homeworld, about the climate on his homeworld, about the names of places on his homeworld that I hadn't filled in. He also talked about this big figure in the background of their lore called Gilgamesh. Called Gilgamesh, the Silent King. And his whole thing was, they maybe earlier on, there's this figure. He gave them some truths, some magical ideas, and then he has no part to play. Now, I had in my own lore background a figure that it wasn't exactly the same, but it was a similar archetype, and I thought, oh, right, okay, what I can do is take what I have, puzzle piece what he said, and do some fiddling with the other bits. So like his homeworld will be called the same thing, and it will have 2 moons, and it was really cool. The moons, like the gravity of the moons prevented the planet from rotating, so it had a dark light and a dark side, which was really cool. And it was this kind of space elf civilization. Now he designed a lot of that, and I loved it. I didn't go, and I said this to him, I didn't go, everything you've said will 100% be in my campaign. What I said was, I'm going to take what you've said, loads of it's going in. Some bits are going to trim. I'm going to trim off. Some bits I'm going to edit so that I can slot it in somewhere. And it meant that we then had this seamless connection where I've welded on his ideas into my world. And then when we returned to his homeworld, he made it. But then I also made it. And that is really, really satisfying. So satisfying. As a DM, as a player, I know he loved it. And you make your players feel valued as world builders.
Yeah. And it is playing in that campaign. It's amazing as well. I think it's really interesting because there's actually a distinction there, because you said, don't make one of the Pantheon, and then talked about a story where he made one of the Pantheon. But the code of that is what we've been talking about quite a lot recently, which is that kind of gentleman. There's probably a better word for it, and we should make a word for it, which is the gentleman's code, is what we're calling it at the moment. Which is all ideas are actually good as long as they're within the realm of the story you're trying to tell. That player's characters were good because they fitted the vibe, the feel, and the story of the campaign. When you're going for an epic sci-fi fantasy in which your campaign is in, if someone says the god of pancakes, you go, that doesn't fit the vibe, the story, or the feel of my campaign. And that is kind of the unwritten contract between players and DMs, where if you stay within the feel and scope of the story, there really isn't much you can go wrong with. You just have to establish where those borders are. And sometimes that's just the session 0 conversation.
Yes.
This is the campaign we're going to have. And then go buck wild, go crazy. Yeah. Imagine as much as you can.
Yeah. I completely agree. And that session 0 conversation of what story do we want to tell is really important. And it's really important the DM is honest about that.
That's so true.
Because that was my mistake in my first campaign. Is it was a goofy one shot with like crazy space like merchants. It was all kind of crazy running around massive gang city. It got really wild. And then what I wanted was a long form campaign, and I shifted it into a long form campaign, which meant I had characters who were one shot characters. For those of you that aren't sure, a one shot is a one or maybe a few, maybe short form episode characters. Often they're goofy. Often you run off of one funny archetype, or you're playing a build you wanted to play. A cool character that you thought, oh, that looks cool from the Tasha's Guide to blah, 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 blah. Whatever, I want to play that. I'm going to go for that. Now,
just going to mess around.
I moved the goalposts, and that at the end of the campaign was a problem because it meant that one of the characters did not fit, and the player felt it didn't fit and he wasn't enjoying it anymore. Now, flip that. The new campaign I'm preparing at the moment, which will be my third one, I've been quite clear with people I've spoken to about it that what I want from it is it's a kind of mid fantasy. So it's not high fantasy, it's not low, it's mid fantasy. It's going to be powerful magic and stuff. But it's going to be Arthurian-ish. It's going to be a bit Game of Thronesy, and that's the vibe I want. So if and people then go, okay, I won't be Hot Dog Jim, the hot dog selling barbarian. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to be him because that's not doesn't suit it. I'm not going to be, but I could be.
I'm throwing out all my papers as we speak.
Yeah, damn it. But you can be Sir Geoffric the Vast.
Yes,
and you're a big dwarf guy. You can be that guy.
Yeah.
Be that guy, and being honest about what you want as a DM and what you want as a player is how you communicate the best and how you get the best story together.
I think that's the word. I think it's communication.
Yeah.
A lot of it always comes down to communicating, and don't be afraid to communicate. I think one of my issues in the start of my third campaign, which is the second one, was such a success.
It was a huge success.
I got to a point where I was like, okay, well, everyone's expecting the next one to be a success, so I have to deliver success. But because of that, I got into my mind a form of perfection, and that perfection entailed me creating things and having this DM mysticism of, you come every session and I've made this perfect thing for you every time. And that shut off my communication to my players. So then the campaign started to suffer because I was actually closing myself off by going, well, I just have to work harder to make it better. But because I was doing that, I was becoming more isolated, and the story was getting worse because I wasn't actually communicating with people because I was holding up this other standard to myself. So if anything I could say for the new and the old DM and player, always communicate. Always keep that fresh. Communicate for your character. If your DM's not getting it for your character, have a little conversation, pull them aside and be like, I really want to explore this. Can we work this in? Don't be afraid to do that, I think, is my one. I also have here, I know we've gone on from them, but the gambling with stories is very much Hemingway when it comes to story writing. Hemingway says, kill your darlings, which is very much transferable, which is sometimes when you gamble with your stories, and I think gamble's the opt word there, as you have a favorite one, and sometimes that favorite one is not picked up, and you have to, as a DM, let that go. And that's hard. It's real hard.
So hard,
but you have to do it.
It does, but
you have to let it go.
So right, because you said that to me about 9 months ago, and with this campaign, and it's happened to me. There's been things. It's happened to me. There's been things that have gone
awful. I know.
Oh my god! But it makes it also. So the example I'm thinking of right now is I had the BBEG, the big bad evil guy of my campaign. This guy Nadir. He was getting he was the king of the Archons, this ancient race of mega powerful space beings. And he's being arisen. He's being awakened by some of the lesser big boss evil guys. And the party turned up, and there was this whole awesome story arc to get to Moribund, which was this Moribund, and it was this planet they had to get to.
We had the whole name of Moribund the whole way through the campaign. It was literally like Moribund. People would whisper it, bad guys would say it. And I think I just want to point that was a great storytelling technique of that one thing, rather than Moribund, and you would hear it and said, and it pulled us through because we're like, what is this place? But sorry,
and that's the breadcrumbing part we talked about before. Is that little drip feed. But they got to Moribund. They fought 2 bosses at once, which was crazy. It was this mad fight. It was really tough, but they actually stopped him being awakened. And part of the awakening was these 3 god weapons had to kind of touch across the veil. So you had this scepter, this scythe, and this spear. And in Nadir's coffin was the spear. And basically one of the characters dunked their hand into this weird extra-dimensional coffin and grabbed the spear. And they rolled really well. They grabbed it and they yanked it out.
Really well.
It was really well, and it was really cool. And at that point, I was like, well, in my head, had this mechanic of how it would open was it needed these 3 god weapons. The god weapon isn't there anymore. So he can't actually be awakened. And in that moment, my BBG was gone. I had this whole plan. I had this vision of what he'd be like. I had this whole mechanics of how he'd fight. I had this whole idea for him. Gone. But it was the most thrilling thing as a DM. Because I went, what I thought the end of this campaign was going to be is now definitely not what's going to happen. And I have no idea what it's going to be. So what is it? And you have to then do the yes and with your end game.
Yeah.
So cool. Insane. And that was just I'm so glad I got to gamble with that. Because actually, it wasn't that I rolled a snake eyes. It was that you guys double sixed, you guys nat 20. And then you got something mega, mega cool. You achieved something. And you guys as a party were then we have achieved the most significant thing yet. For sure. And that is just Oh, that's
It
beautiful
also,
stuff.
for us playing that, there's no like plot armor. Like everything is possible, which was a really interesting thing to have as a player. Of like, if you strive hard enough, if you work hard enough, if you roll good enough, anything is possible. The world completely can change at the drop of a hat, and that is revolutionary for us as a player. Because you're like, wow, we can try anything, we can do anything, we can stop these things. I can only imagine as a GM, once again talking about that chaos and it being opportunity of just like, wow, okay, we've this has changed. What else is going on? What's next? Where am I going to send these people? I can imagine that's quite daunting. But
it was a bit, yeah,
I
was
can
a
imagine.
bit.
But you playing in that, I know that you already had other big players in the universe.
Yes.
When one evil is snuffed, others fill, and it becomes more. And
and that's so cool because then I go, wow, okay, looks like this guy is more powerful than I thought he was going to be, because he's going to be more powerful now because the big guy's gone.
Yeah,
and like you say, we'll fill the gap. So who's going to fill it? How? And that the other question I had, which I loved, was how. How are they going to fill the power vacuum? And it was like, well, they're going to seek out power.
Yeah,
and that in itself was a cool moment. We've explored that a little bit more. Now, one thing I mentioned earlier, and I really want to talk about because I really like it.
Okay,
it's types of player.
Oh,
now we discussed this ahead of time. And
we did a little
there was
bit.
A few that cross streams. There's a few we use different terms for. Could you go through your list and just explain what each of them is? And then we can discuss.
Let's do it. Okay, so as a DM, you should look out for your types of player. You should look out for what they enjoy, so you can sow your seeds and gamble with those storylines a little bit better. So the type of players that there's probably more, but what I've found: the lore monkey, the dice roller, the power gamer, the RPer, the conflict chaser, and the epic gamer. Do you have any others, or do you want me to go through them now?
Go through them. I didn't have any extras to that.
Yeah, okay. Dope. So we're in the same mind then.
Same mind.
So the lore monkey, I guess the lore monkey because it's cheeky. But I don't know why, because they collect things, I guess. But maybe it just sounds cool. The lore monkey is the person that loves the lore. They just love it. They just love consuming it. The world is a story for them, and they love how everything interacts with everything else. They can be a little bit scary for a DM because you've got to keep on your books so the lore monkey doesn't catch you up. But they're amazing because they're a person to have in your game who absolutely loves the world you're building, and they are there for you to bounce stuff off. The way to please this player is to put awesome lore in your stories. Go, this person connects to this person because of this, and the world was created by these people, and they had these sets of stones that are scattered out through the universe, and if you find them, they will give you this mystical knowledge, and there's a cursed library here who was the thing of ancient wizard Beelzebub, and he had all the stores of knowledge, and he was the grandest of the thing. And people who love lore will suck that up like a sponge, and all you have to do is mention a single word, and the lore monkey will be like, oh, I know that person. Oh, they're connected to this person, which means this thing has a relevance to that thing.
Yes,
absolutely,
100%. As a certified lore monkey, I like to think of myself also as a magpie.
Oh, I like that.
Maybe a shiny bits. You take shiny bits and then you take them back to your nest and you make your larger lore nest of little shiny things. And I just love it. I'm the sort of person that I still do go on Wikipedia, the Star Wars Wikipedia, and look at the abilities and powers section and just make hierarchies of the dopest and coolest, most powerful Jedi and Sith and stuff like that. So I love this person was a great swordsman in their time. Would they be? We used to have conversations of who is the major league gamer, who's the MLG guys,
the MLG guy.
Who would, if this person from this bygone age in this world fought this person, who would come out on top? And it's so fun doing that. So as a total lore monkey, I totally agree. Now your next one was it the
dice roller?
Now I said combat machine, and this is an interesting thing. So you said dice roller. because it's the people that like the clack,
the clicky clack, the clicky clack of the dice. They love it.
Of the dice hitting the table,
Yeah.
and they love that moment and that feeling. And I get it. I get it. I like that part too. Now, I said combat machine which is kind of different. Because
there is a little difference there.
Sure. Some people are a combat machine because they like the cinematics of combat. They like I slice the head from the ogre and run him through with my great blade. I kick him from my sword and flick blood upon my enemies. That moment.
They exist. I know them.
They love those.
Yeah. What did you call that? Sorry, again?
That's I was saying combat machine, or like a cinematics. They love they love cinematics. Like and that's, I think a lot of people like that who it might be a video game thing.
I think it is. Yeah.
People go, really I love this video game because I can kill. I fight like this, and that's
like God of War style.
Like God of War style, exactly.
Buttons to rip and tear.
Exactly that, and that's really fun. Now a dice roller is subtly different. It is subtly different. How would you just say it is different? Because we talked. I
think dice rollers. They like the clickety clack the dice, but they also love the big numbers. Their whole game is they want to get that big number. They want the big number. They want to do the big hit, and sometimes they're not as descriptive with their kill cams or whatever, but they love getting that big number. They love getting. What I like to do for these people is I just love giving them dice to roll. I go, okay, here's your sword. Instead of doing 1d8, it's 2d4, and they're like, whoa.
More dice.
More dice to roll. So easily pleased, but they definitely and that can go to skills, that can go to anything. They just like the clickety clack of the dice. And sometimes you find those people that's what they're playing for. They don't RP as much, or they don't like to come out of their shell as much. Totally fine. You play to what they want to play at. You want to roll dice, maybe I give you dice to roll.
Yeah.
Don't you worry.
Exactly. And your next one was it RP?
No, it was the Power Gamer.
Power Gamer, okay.
Which is the controversial topic in itself.
Interesting, because the Power Gamer as well lends it, and they cross over.
A
lot of these cross over, and I don't think anybody is only one. I think everybody has
agree.
Different sub ones. I think usually you have a major, and then you have a minor in different stuff. You know, like the Power Gamer, I find it really hard not to power game. I find it really difficult to make subpar mechanical decisions on my character and let that happen. I find it really difficult. We've got a friend who is really good at going, but like he's playing a really cool, like battle cleric, like war cleric. But he had this thing where he was like, I don't heal. And I was like, I'd never make that cool because that's mechanically bad. But it was so thematically cool.
Yeah,
he was like hamstrung by this thing, but that was such a character thing, and like I just thought that is really incredible character building. That is so cool. You're opting out of an entire group of incredibly good spells. Like that is wild.
The story
so cool. I just thought it was so cool.
I was a big fan of that. One thing to talk about with the Power Gamers is it can be a struggle for new DMs to get a hold of a Power Gamer. Yes. That's the only struggle. Is if you're a new DM, there's a certain way of handling Power Gamers, and that is sometimes you have to say no to certain ridiculous things, like the polymorph. You make a fairy, it polymorphs everyone into a T-Rex, and then you can continuously do that. There's some really outlandish things you can do with the rules, which you should just say no to. Straight up. You should be like, no, that shouldn't be in the story. It's too strong. You should definitely not go too far and start banning things that are fair. Only ban the stuff that is really, really just breaks the story. Once again, the gentleman's code, don't break the story. If it's going to break it, don't allow it. But once you get better at DMing, you get more experience, the Power Game is not that hard to handle. You just give them harder problems to solve, or you make the bosses stronger, or if you have lesser experienced players, you give them items that are stronger than the Power Gamers items, so that the person who is least experienced has more strength, and therefore their baseline will be lifted up higher, so the Power Gamer can still get all their numbers right, but they'll be on par with the less experienced player. And
you have to manage, as a DM, you've got to manage people. You've got to manage your team with items. You can manage it with level ups at times. Yep. I personally am not from the school, and I know you're not, of having people of different levels, unless there's it's really difficult. It's really hard. It is really tough doing it that way.
It breeds competition, I find, as well.
Exactly. And
we're here to Well, we definitely play cooperative games.
Yes,
we're here to
agreed.
Power of friendship.
Yes.
I don't like anything that breeds competition. I find I
I
want you to
agree
go
with
to a
that.
village and kill 78 kobolds to get the next level up. I don't want that.
No, that's just bad, and that's the XP versus milestone leveling up,
Yeah.
which we'll probably talk about another time
in another episode. Let's go on to our next one.
Yes, carry on to the next one.
I've actually made a little note here since we've been talking, which is the RPer/story gamer, because I wanted to add that in because of your mention of our player, which is I am this person. I am the RP.
You are the RP.
I like combat. Combat's cool. I like the risk of combat, but I am the RP. I would happily have a whole session where I just sit down and talk in my character. I love that. I think that comes from... I like character conflict, which obviously, if you're RPing, can be resolved through character conflict. But I also love story. I think the real cooperative storytelling comes out in the RP. That moment, like we said before, of all the players sat around the campfire and a siren tells them his ancient blessing from his people, and they all do it. Or you finally reveal that part of the backstory that puts all your character in place for everyone in the team. They go, oh, that's why your character's like that, because we finally find out that one bit. Those moments, some of the best moments in D&D I've ever had, are those heroic moments after a battle and someone says a speech, or it's the funeral of a character and we're all moved to tears by just the immensity of the kind of emotional weight we're all feeling. I think that for me is where just the magic of D&D really, really comes out.
Yeah, 100%. It's so special, those storytelling moments where everyone's contributed, everyone's giving parts of it, and they're making it their own. It's joyous. I definitely think I sit a little. I'm definitely in the storyteller camp. I love storytelling, and I love the RP, and I love voices for characters and things like that. I really love doing that. It's really enjoyable. Now, next one, I think in this order was, you said the conflict chaser. Now, it's interesting because when I was taking notes on the same thing, I said controversial. And we actually had a conversation about this, about how probably the connotations of controversial is that their person is being negative, which isn't true. Because conflict is important. It is. Conflict is really important.
Controversial. The word controversial means that you're going to touch on topics that people might not all agree on, which is inherently not a bad thing.
No.
It just means that you're playing a different type of game. It comes back to the gentleman's agreement again, of if you are playing a game where you're going to be touching upon controversial topics, and you're doing this as kind of a thought experiment where you're all going to play a character and you're going to see how people react to that. Amazing. That's the type of game to bring out your controversial stuff, and let's do a thought experiment game. How interesting. Conflict, I think, is a different type of player. I think conflict people make the bad example of a conflict chaser is the person who makes the edgelord character who goes against the grain of the party. Which is I think the bad example. But you can do conflict chasers in a good way of being the black sheep of the party. And though you're not constantly rubbing the party the wrong way, you are the one that's like, well, actually, I don't agree with that, and here's why. And you give the counter. You're playing devil's advocate of the team. You can be the conflict chaser, which is the devil's advocate of the team, which is a really interesting story. The wizard in your campaign would be a prime example of this. Because they are always the devil's advocate. If the team goes one way, they go, well, actually, I'm going to put this forward. They will eventually come back to the team, but they want to make this case heard that there's a different perspective. I think that can make conflict, which can be interesting as long as you have a team that is dedicated to actually making that happen, and they're all about that.
And that is, I find this interesting. So some people are cool as a cucumber with conflict RP, and I get hot. I get flustered. I can do it.
You get the adrenaline rush.
But I get the adrenaline rush, and I get a bit hot under the collar, and it gets spicy. And some people are cool as a cucumber. And there's no right way of doing it. It doesn't matter your reaction to it, but conflict can be so useful as a DM and as a player. There's no problem with conflict if it's healthy. Conflict, and it doesn't bleed over into your friendship. So sometimes that's a good thing to have a conversation. Is go, hey man, I know we were shouting each other as our characters, but we are cool. It's just our
good, cool,
then,
right?
And then yeah, we're cool, right? And then,
we're cool, right?
You go and you're all good.
Exactly.
Now, the final one you said was Epic Gamer,
which
I think, interestingly, I think that is the combat machine.
Yeah, I think it ties into your combat machine.
It is.
Yeah.
I think it is.
And also, I think the Epic Gamer is slightly different for me in the fact that, yes, they'll do the cool cinematics. They want everything to be epic. They want everything to be cool. And I'm very much this one as well. I like everything to be epic and cool. And that's also in the choices the character makes as well, I think. It's not just, the combat machine where you're slicing. It's the choices you make. You make the coolest, the epic thing. You want the story to not be mundane or low. You're trying to drive it to that epic kind of level, I think.
Exactly. And the epic scale, if that's what you want, it can be so satisfying. It can be so good. Okay, wonderful. So I think there we've talked a lot then about what makes a good character, about motives, about backstory, about growth. Instigated by the DM, instigated by the player. Also, we talked about types of player, the lore monkey or lore keeper, the dice roller, the RP lover, the other one you said that I've now immediately forgotten.
Epic gamer and the conflict chaser.
And the conflict chaser, yeah. And it also, as a person, it's good to reflect on what type of player you are. Particularly, I think it's really important. I think it's really important to go, okay, what I love is I love dice rolling. Tell your DM, go, hey man, I like RPing, but my favorite bit is picking up 20 D8, slapping them down, and tallying up my crazy amount of damage to kill the greater demon. Yeah, that is super cool. And if people like that, DMs go, okay, right. So you like doing that? I'll give you some of that on a platter.
Dope,
brilliant.
Yeah, and for a little roundup for me as well, I think that's exactly it. Like, when coming to your character, don't worry if it's two-dimensional when you first start, but look for those opportunities to develop your character. Always be looking for those chances to grow and develop your character as a player. And like you said, Sam, find out what really turns you on to playing, what it is, what makes the game exciting for you, and communicate that to your DM as well. And then once you're on the same page and you're reacting and yes-anding, you're going to have a great time.
100%. Thank you very much for your time, Connor.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for listening.